your shirt, your shoes, even the power in your home right now may all have been brought to you by what activists call modern-day slavery.
What we have going on is the resurgence of concentration camps in the modern day age. We have literal slaves picking cotton in fields. We have people that are in factory environments and unable to leave.
The U.S. State Department estimates up to 2 million ethnic Uyghurs and other Muslims in the Chinese region of Xinjiang have passed through a sprawling system of detention camps because of their ethnicity and religion. And some victims say they were tortured, raped, even sterilized. And that's on top of the labor they're forced into, producing everything from clothes to electronics to solar panels. The Chinese government insists it is combating religious extremism, and its facilities are voluntary training centers teaching residents job skills. The Chinese government vehemently denies widespread allegations of human rights abuses in Xinjiang. According to a congressional report, some American companies are, quote, suspected of directly employing forced labor or sourcing from suppliers that are suspected of using forced labor, unquote, and in the process allegedly helping China suppress and abuse Uyghurs in what the U.S. government calls genocide.
I think they're complicit with the genocide going on in China.
At least 8 U.S. companies may have directly or indirectly sourced materials made in the Xinjiang region, including American giants such as Coca-Cola and Nike, whose CEO was invited to testify before the House Foreign Affairs Committee about this issue. And the committee says Nike passed.
I think Nike realizes buying the cotton that comes out of the Xinjiang province that they are complicit with this act of genocide, and they didn't want any spotlight.
Nike pushes back on that in a statement saying, quote, our ongoing diligence has not found evidence of employment of Uyghurs or other ethnic minorities from Zhuar elsewhere in our supply chain. But lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are coming together to fight what they call the exploitation of a repressed ethnic minority by the Chinese government. Currently, there are 2 bills in Congress banning the import of any goods made with forced labor from the Xinjiang region.
There has to be some corporate responsibility here. I'm all for, Republican. I'm all for helping out companies get bigger and hire more employees, but we're talking about genocide.
A similar bill was introduced in last year's legislative session and passed in the House, but never made it to the Senate.
We have companies, even companies that present themselves as these very woke companies in support of the right causes, that are behind closed doors profiting off of literal modern-day slavery.
Official lobbying records show Nike and Coca-Cola both spending hundreds of thousands of dollars lobbying the bill, with the New York Times reporting those 2 companies were among multiple massive corporations trying to weaken the legislation.
They were the very lobbying group that killed the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act last Congress. I assume they're going to try to do the same this Congress. And also, I would assume they may try to bring down my Uyghur Muslim Genocide Act.
Coca-Cola did not respond to our request for comment, but earlier this year told the New York Times it, quote, strictly prohibits any type of forced labor in our supply chain, unquote. But Coca-Cola did not address its lobbying efforts. The drink giant also says it uses third-party auditors to closely monitor its suppliers. Nike insists it did not lobby against the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. But Nike's director of global communications told the New York Times the company had, quote, constructive discussions with congressional staff aides aimed at eliminating forced labor and protecting human rights. Not everyone is buying the U.S. company's denials.
I think the evidence is pretty clear they're not telling the truth.
But even if this new bill passes, experts say it may not go far enough. And U.S. companies have to do better.
We would venture to say that if they have supply chains in the region, they absolutely do have links to forced labor. They need to extricate themselves from having any links with any suppliers in the region.
Which is why lawmakers and activists are hoping to rally the American people to take a moral stand.
I think now is the time for the American people to wake up after COVID and stand up to these atrocities and stand up to genocide. We have a moral choice before us. And the question is whether we're going to stand on the right of human rights or we're going to stand with corporate America on this.